In many later folk beliefs, no one is born a Rusalka, she is made, and she is made by the worst days a village can produce. Across the Slavic lands, from the rivers of Ukraine to the lakes of the Russian north, the belief changed from region to region, but one shape returned again and again. When a young woman died in the water, she did not always stay dead. A girl who drowned by accident. A bride betrayed before her wedding, who walked into the river with stones in her apron. A daughter who took her own life and was refused a place in holy ground. A child who died without baptism, too small to have a name. These were the dead who could not rest. This is Myths from the Shadows, where every culture hides a secret waiting to be told. Subscribe and join the Myth Keepers, because some stories must never be forgotten. The old belief called them the unquiet dead. They had died before their time, and the earth itself would not take them. A person was meant to live a full span of years, marry and grow old, then to be buried with the right words in the right ground. When death came too early and too wrongly, the door to the next world stayed shut. The soul remained where it fell. And for a drowned girl, where it fell was the water, so she stays. She haunts the exact river that took her, the same bend, the same dark pool under the willows. She keeps her face and her youth, because she was never allowed to lose them. In many tellings she keeps her memory too. She remembers the lover who did not come. She remembers the village that would not bury her. And her anger has a direction. The stories most often make young men her favorite prey. The bachelors, the handsome ones, the very kind of man who might have driven a living girl into the river in the first place. Whoever wronged her is long gone, so every young man by the water pays a piece of his debt. In those stories, her vengeance is not blind, it is aimed. There is one more layer, and it should be named carefully, because it is a reading, not a tale. Some scholars believe the Rusalka is older than her tragedy. In this view, she began as a water spirit of the pagan Slavs, a bringer of spring moisture who walked the fields and made them fertile. Only later, the argument goes, did she darken into a drowned and dangerous ghost? The villagers never told it that way, but keep the idea in your pocket. It will explain something strange before this story is over. You know her when you see her, and by then it may be too late. She rises from the water pale, almost translucent, as if the river had washed the living color out of her. She wears a long white shift with no belt or nothing at all. Her hair is the first thing the stories mention and the last thing her victims see. It is long, thick, and completely unbound, hanging loose past her waist. In some tellings it is fair, in others brown, and in many it is green, green as river weed, green as young rye. That loose hair meant something in the old villages. A living woman bound her hair, girls wore braids, and wives covered their heads. Hair worn long and wild belonged to no proper category of woman. It marked her as something outside every rule. And her hair is always wet. She sits on the bank or on a low willow branch, combing it through hour after hour. In some tellings her comb is cut from fish bone. In some, she must never let her hair dry, for the water in it is the water of her life. That is the southern Rusalka, the one from the warm rivers of Ukraine, lovely enough to stop a man mid-step, travel north, and she changes. Around the upper Volga, the villagers described something else entirely. A hideous woman, humpbacked and hairy, with sharp claws and an iron hook to snatch travelers from the bank. Same name, often the same link to the unquiet dead, but not always the same face, as if beauty itself depended on how cold the water was. Her methods rarely need the hook. She calls, she laughs, she splashes in the shallows like a girl at play, and she lets the curious come to her. Those she catches, she wraps in her long hair and pulls under, and then there is her strangest weapon, repeated in story after story. She tickles her victims to death. It sounds like a joke until you sit with it, laughter forced out of a drowning man until his breath is gone. The stories do not smile when they tell it. They love music almost as much as they love the water. The stories tell of shepherds caught out after dark and made to play for them. The Rusalki dance to his pipe all night, and he cannot stop, and his fingers cannot rest. In the morning the grass shows a worn hollow where his foot beat time until dawn. She is not always alone in her kingdom. In some water spirit tales, the deepest pools belong to the Vedyanoi, the old man of the water and master of the drowned. In some tellings, drowned girls or female water spirits become his wives. Even in death, the drowned girl is not entirely free. But for most of the year she stays in the river, and the river can be avoided. The danger truly begins in early summer, when the rye comes into bloom. Because once a year, the Rusalki come out. In many traditions, it begins around Trinity Sunday, most often in the week after, when spring tips over into summer. The villagers called it Rusalnaya week, the Rusalki's week. For 7 days, the drowned leave the water. Picture one village on the first morning of it. The rye stands green and waist high, just coming into flower. The birches are in full leaf. And everyone in the village walks a little differently, because everyone knows what the fields hold now. The Rusalki have climbed out of the rivers overnight. By day they hide in the birches. By night they run the rye fields, swing on the low branches, and dance in circles under the moon. Where they dance, the grass grows back darker and thicker, in rings the mowers find weeks later. The week came with rules, and in some villages they were treated as deadly serious. No one swims. No one steps on wet linen found spread on the grass, for the Rusalki lay there washing out to dry. A man who trod on it lost his strength, or left the field a cripple. Not on a hot afternoon, not on a dare, not at all, for the water is theirs now and a swimmer is a gift. No one washes linen at the river, no one works alone in the fields, and in many places no one works at all. The stories say the Rusalki punished those who broke the week. The punishment fell on what a family could least afford, the cattle and the birds of the yard. But fear was only half of the arrangement. The other half looks almost like love. In the same villages that barred their doors, women walked out to the birches and hung gifts on the branches. Shifts, ribbons, rags, skeins of good thread, cloth for the drowned girls, who were buried in whatever they wore. In some regions, a man who met them in the open could still save himself. He threw them a handkerchief or tore a scrap from his own shirt. The dead girl still wanted what every village girl wanted, something soft, something made for her. In some places, the week had its own peak of danger. Thursday, that day was treated almost as the Rusalka's own holy day, and the careful stayed home altogether. On that day, the belief said, the drowned walked the fields in open daylight. The girls of the village had their own rite. They wove wreaths of birch and wildflowers and set them floating on the water, reading their futures in them. In many tellings, a wreath that drifted smoothly promised marriage. A wreath that sank was a bad sign, misfortune, no wedding or worse. The girl who threw it went home quiet. And under all of it ran the strange double truth of the week. The Rusalki were feared and the Rusalki were needed. Where they walked, the ride rank. Their dancing was said to make the grain grow. The same week that locked the village down was also the week that fed it. The old spring spirit, the one the scholars talk about, is easiest to see right here, still walking the fields under the ghost story. Every village knew the defenses, and every mother taught them early. In Christian villages, one defense was the cross. A baptismal cross worn against the skin, and a prayer said before going near the water, closed the door she came through. Another was silence, a voice calling from the river at night, however sweet, however familiar, was never to be answered. But the oldest and surest defense was a plant, wormwood, a bitter gray herb that grows on every roadside. Carried in the pocket or tucked into the belt, it is the one smell the Rusalka cannot bear. Here is how the stories say it happens. A man cuts across the field edge at dusk during her week. The rye stirs where there is no wind. And she is simply there, standing in the green, pale and lovely, her wet hair down to her waist. She does not attack. She asks a question, wormwood or parsley? What do you carry, wormwood or parsley? Everything now depends on one word. If he says wormwood, she shrieks as if burned and turns to flee. He must throw the herb straight into her eyes and run. But if he says parsley, her whole face brightens. You are my darling, she says. And then come the hands and the laughter, his and hers together. The tickling does not stop when he begs. It does not stop when he weeps. It does not stop. In the old tongue, her question even rhymes. Wormwood, pollen, rhymes with the hedge you hide behind. Parsley, Petrushka, rhymes with darling, Dushka. Her deadly game has the sound of a children's song. that is the Rusalka in a single detail. A dead girl playing a game she can no longer lose. She could be survived, she could even be sent home. When Rusalnaya week ended, many villages performed one last rite, the seeing off of the Rusalka. They made her in effigy, a figure of straw and rags in a woman's dress, or they chose a living girl to wear the part, hair loosed over her face. Then the whole village walked her out, past the last houses, into the rye or down to the water. The songs they sang were half mockery and half farewell. The straw figure was torn apart and scattered on the fields, or drowned or buried in the grain. The message was gentle and final. Your week is over, go back to the water, feed the rye on your way out. And the village breathed again until next summer. The Rusalka does not haunt alone. Her family is large, and one sister is stranger than she is. In the forests of Ukraine and the Carpathian Mountains lives the Mavka. She too is the soul of a girl dead before her time. She too is young and beautiful, with long green hair, and she too tickles the men she catches until they die. But the Mavka carries her death where she cannot hide it. In some tellings she has no back, from the front she is perfect. From behind she is open, and everything inside her can be seen. She is like a mask of a woman, with nothing holding it closed. She casts no shadow, she leaves no reflection in water, beauty from exactly one direction and death from every other. Russian folk speech even named a Rusalka for her favorite weapon, the loskotuka, the tickler. When a fear gets its own word, the fear is real. And she never truly left. Long after such village rites began to fade, she walked into the concert halls. Pushkin wrote a drama about a miller's daughter, drowned and returned as a Rusalka, and left it unfinished at his death. Gogol gave a drowned lady a moonlit revenge in one of his Ukrainian tales, and in 1901, in Prague, the composer Antonin Dvorak put her name on an opera. Its heroine is a water spirit who gives up her voice for a human prince. That opera carries the old name into theaters to this day. The world hears Rusalka and thinks of a tragic song. The villagers knew better, because the belief itself never needed the poets. It needed only a river, a night, and a girl who died wrongly. Stand on any quiet bank after dark and the old logic still works on you. The water is calm, the reeds hold still, nothing moves out there in the dark. That was the story of the Rusalka, the girl the water would not give back. If her story stayed with you, help keep it alive. Subscribe and join the Myth Keepers, and the next tale will be waiting beside this one.